Well, Simon and we met quite a little bit later on in life, really. Simon was a publishing director for a magazine called Risk Waters, who were based in London. And at the time, I was senior HR manager at Channel 4. We got married, managed to buy our first house, and we were renovating it. We had really exciting plans for our future together. And I was also pregnant. I was pregnant with our first baby, and we were really excited about starting our family. I was in the last stages of my maternity leave, so I was sort of doing a lot of organisation. I remember walking back into my office, and I could see Sky News, but there was that tagline running across the bottom. It said breaking news, and they were reporting that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. But it was really weird at that stage because people thought it was just like a biplane, like an aviation accident, and people weren't very sure about it. But my colleague then came in and she said, "Have you seen this?" I said, "Yes, I have." And I said, "Simon's at the World Trade Center. There's a conference there today." And then we watched as a second plane flew into the World Trade Center. He was on the 108th floor of that building. And we know now that where the plane went in, anybody who was above that, nobody got out from that building. So Simon, he died with 16 of his work colleagues. I didn't really know who I was after that day. And throwing into that the fact that 2 months later my son was born, so I became then a new mother as well, but didn't really have all the emotional capacity at that point to really know how to handle being a mother, as well as trying to balance the grief that I was feeling. Nobody had told me how deep the emotion of grief is. Nobody has ever given me any indication of the depth that you can plummet to when you find yourself in a traumatic situation. And it felt like everything I had been taught up until that point, all the tools I've been shown, all the resilience, all the different techniques that you're shown as you're growing up to handle life, all became completely redundant. It terrified me. It terrified me that I was in it. It terrified me that I felt unable to handle it. I've always thought of myself as independent and resilient and a capable woman. And yet I was facing a situation which I thought I couldn't handle at all, despite everybody around me, my friends and family and everything that was there to help me. It was a very, very lonely, scary place. And that was the point at which I thought I have to do something, because when I would look at William, I would think, if I actually decide to take my own life here, the one thing that held me was the fact that I knew Simon would be furious with me. And so I had to stay. That was the only option that I knew was real, was I had to stay and look after William. So I did. So there was something inside me, and I think even now I can only ever call it intuition, my soul. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it drove me to find a path. And the motivation was for William and I to enjoy life again. I had been introduced to something called Reiki, something called life coaching, and I trained in those areas, and I subsequently trained as a psychotherapist, because my footprint professionally was not ever to be in the corporate world after this event, but was to actually work as one of those people, one of the helpers, one of the people that works to heal rather than anything revengeful. So forgiveness, it's difficult to directly forgive people who actually aren't here either, because in that moment they chose to take their own lives as well. And to actually forgive a way of thinking and an ethos is very difficult. So my forgiveness is not directly at the people involved. My forgiveness is in the circumstances that I found myself in, and choosing not to follow that same path, choosing to break the cycle, choosing to try and tip the balance in every single thing that I do, to make sure that the footprint that I leave behind is one of positivity, one of healing, one of support, compassion, and one of humanity, really. I chose to write a book about my experiences because I also wanted to pass on the understanding that I'd learnt from this experience, which is, it doesn't matter what anybody tells you, your experience belongs to you, and you are the only person that can find your way through these experiences. And however you find your way through, if it feels right for you, then that's the right path to be taking. The other part of it is knowing that everything I do has been shaped by those events. So I don't forget it, I don't have closure on it, but who I am is completely defined by the life lessons that I have learned throughout all of this experience.